privilege to talk with you today. I think we want to say a little bit more about pointing out some facts and then hopefully have a good discussion about affordable housing. I agree with Elizabeth. Matt Desmond's book is a great book. I've read the first part of it, and I also read the last 2 chapters. And it is a great book. I recommend it. I would say you would like it, but that would be the wrong word, because this is a book about tragic events. It's a book about a tragedy. But it's still, there's no Hollywood ending in this book, trust me. But it's a very important book. So, it really relates very much with our topic of housing and poverty. It's a great thing in Cincinnati that we are now talking about child poverty. It's a very important discussion to have. And the thing that I want to say about that is that it's not just child poverty, of course. Every child has a parent. If they're fortunate, oftentimes they have 2 parents. And it's not just the children that are poor, it's also the parents. And we can't lose track of that. It's about income, it's about access to jobs. And so that's the broader context of the housing situation. So I have a few facts that I just want to hit really quickly. They all relate to what's in Desmond's book, I think. And the first fact we have here is the great news that we now have full employment in the United States. And isn't that great? Hooray. The unemployment rate is now only 4.9%. So we all should be happy. Of course, the people that Desmond is writing about are the people who tend to be among the 4.9%. Also, as I'm sure you all know, there's another category of individuals, the ones who aren't even looking for work, who don't even fall into the 4.9% figure. And so when compiling these statistics, the government ignores people who have given up looking for work. Our social welfare system, including our housing programs, seem to be more and more based on an idea. And that idea is that all able-bodied adults should either be working or getting trained for jobs. And that's a great thing. I've been working with families like those described in Desmond's book for 40 years, and it's a real honor to try to help those people. But, we have to be real when we think about social welfare policy and affordable housing. Where are the jobs? If we're going to require that people have jobs, don't we have to factor in the fact that there aren't enough jobs to go around? And then there's also the thing about how so many jobs are not full-time jobs, where they pay very poorly. So that's the big picture. And it's something that I think are failing to take into account when we devise housing programs and other social welfare programs. It's not fair to say to someone you have to have a job. We know that 5% of the population or more are unemployed. We have to do a better job of devising fair programs. So a few very specific facts about housing that I think really fit in with what Elizabeth said about how Cincinnati is very much like Milwaukee. In Cincinnati, the average 2-bedroom apartment rents for $760 a month. And in case you're wondering, that does include utilities. That's an important fact. Another important fact is that what about those apartments that are rent for less than that? Well, I'll tell you this. A lot of those apartments, most of them that are very cheap, they're in terrible condition. So we've got lots of housing that needs lots of work. So then what does this mean for low-income families? Is $760 an affordable rent? So I give the example in number 2 on my handout, or is it number 3? It's number 3, of a typical family, a one-parent working family, earning about $20,000 a year. This parent has 2 kids. So that's $1,667 a month. According to everybody in the housing field, it's hard if you're paying more than 30% of your income for rent. 30% of that monthly income figure is $499. A family of 3 with $20,000 in income can afford if they're paying $760, they're paying almost 50% of their income in rent. And the important thing about this, and we see this every day at Legal Aid, is that those families are on the verge of being evicted every month. And the reason they're on the verge of being evicted every month is because even a relatively minor financial setback, a sick child, whatever, can get in the way of paying rent, and the next thing you know, you're getting evicted. So one of the things I looked at and I wanted to provide you with this information is, so how many people do get evicted in Cincinnati every year? So I went back and looked at the clerk of court records, and I saw that over 16,000 evictions are filed in Hamilton County every year. Very similar to the situation in Milwaukee. More than 10% of the rental housing units in Hamilton County have an eviction filed in connection with them and the families living in them every year.
John, repeat that number again.
16,000. About 100 evictions a day. 250 days.
If I could just footnote, a student at UC was doing a project and went down to eviction court to observe. A professor told him to if they wanted to understand housing. He clocked it, and he said there was one eviction every minute in the court. That was how long it took to do the evictions, 100 a day.
Right, and so with those evictions, the vast majority of people who have evictions filed against them, they end up being evicted. They either move out before the court date or they get an eviction order and then they move. Yes, sir.
That was my question. How many people does that involve?
Right. So it's not like there's 16,000 evictions and most people get to stay. Practically all those families have to move.
But I don't think that was your question.
No.
No, it's my understanding that they have to have an advance payment, and so then they don't pay their rent. And it takes them a couple of months to get out, but then the same people cycle through again and move around.
There certainly are lots of repeat customers when it comes to evictions. And part of the reason for that is that once you're evicted, it's really hard to, you sort of move down in the housing market. It's harder and harder to find a place to live. It's harder and harder to find a decent place to live. And so, many people who get evicted, the families end up being homeless or living with friends or relatives. And that's what Desmond's book really talks about in large part, is how disastrous eviction can be for families,
right,
and all the impacts, the terrible impacts that it has.
John, do you
one thing that we don't think about as it relates to the court system is where evictions are concerned, even if the eviction is dismissed, landlords still hold that against a lot of individuals. So in terms of recycling the evictions in the housing market, a lot of times housing is, people are exempt from housing because it's on the record. So, we need to work with the clerk of courts to even dismiss, to remove information like that, because it hinders a lot of families.
A very important point. If you're evicted from either public housing or private housing, that record stays with you, and many landlords won't even look at you.
Right, and what I'm saying is that even if they're not evicted, if the eviction is dismissed, it still hinders families.
That's right. That's right. So the other facts we have here are, Elizabeth mentioned this earlier, we've got our bar chart here showing that that there are 4 times as many low-income families that are financially eligible for government subsidized rental housing than there are government subsidized housing units or vouchers. So, the red thing on your piece of paper, that represents the number of public housing units, rental vouchers, and other subsidized rental housing. The yellow bars represent the number of families, including elderly households, that are eligible financially for that housing. So we have a shortfall, a huge shortfall. Yes.
And what is the reason for the shortfall? Is there not enough funds from HUD? Is there not enough housing stock available, or both? What?
Right. Well, it's a funding issue. What we show with number 6 is that the HUD budget for rental housing is $40 billion a year, and it's really been sort of stagnant for many, many years. it's never really gone up for a very long time, and so there's just, it's a long-term, limited budget for these kinds of programs. And that's why 3/4 of low-income people are in the private housing market that Desmond talks about. And so, you know, it raises the question of what is subsidized housing, right? So I like to remind people in these kinds of settings that we have a huge subsidized housing program in the United States. And it's not really for low-income people, it is for a lot of us who own our homes. And it's the income tax deduction for real estate and interest. And the estimate is that last year, approximately, that program provided tax breaks of $170 billion to homeowners in the United States. And, you know, obviously homeownership is a good thing, and the government wants to support that, but look at the disparity between the amount of money that we devote to affordable rental housing for low-income families, $40 billion, and the amount of money we provide in subsidies to some of us in the form of deductions on our federal income tax. And that brings me to the final thing. I know we want you to read the book, but I'm going to jump the gun and tell you what Desmond says about his ideas regarding the solution. And what he talks about is the need for there to be, in his opinion, a rental voucher program for all low-income Americans. And, you know, let's make up for this deficit. But where would the money come from? That's the question, right? And I can talk about that at length,
But the mortgage interest deduction is a very interesting place to maybe begin.
Well, you know what?
If not doing away with it, at least capping income-wise. I mean, millionaires get that deduction.
So, you know, you could add up 170 billion, 40 billion, to $210 billion. There are 240 million adults in the United States. So, right there, that sum of money gives you a pretty good chunk of change to subsidize everybody, every adult in the United States with housing. And that way we could spread it out more and serve a lot more low-income people. Just a thought.
If I could continue just a little bit, I think John and I have worked in this area so long, we assume that people know the situation.